All right. Well, we still will have some more trickling in, I believe, but why don't we go ahead and get started just to
Sure.
be respectful of the time that everybody has set aside today. So,
Sure.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to welcome you. My name is Jennifer Ciarimboli, and I'm the founder and CEO of Studio B. I'm thrilled that you've joined us today for this really special and very important talk with our wonderful guest today, Dr. Roya Fahmy. Roya, I'm just going to go ahead and share your incredible bio with our audience. Roya Fahmy is currently working as the Senior Director of the Project for Enhanced Global Understanding at Wyoming Seminary College Preparatory School in Kingston, Pennsylvania. The project brings together Israeli and Palestinian teens to incorporate social justice into their lives, gains conflict transformation skills, and train as future global leaders. She serves as the social, emotional, and diversity counselor for the whole school community. She's also a licensed psychotherapist who specializes in youth and families of global cultures and world religions. Roya spent 7 years in academia, teaching graduate social work and cross-cultural competence. She was at the Temple University Graduate School of Social Work, as well as Misericordia University in Pennsylvania. Roya grew up traveling and learning multiple languages and cultures from her family's Iranian, Egyptian, Russian, and Turkish heritages. And she had Christian, Jewish, and Muslim faith traditions. She graduated from Wilkes University in Pennsylvania with a bachelor's degree in communications and earned a self-designated master's degree in global social work from the University of Maryland at Baltimore. In response to the 9/11 crisis, Roya founded Visions of Tolerance, an international consulting organization in 2002 to promote conflict resolution and multicultural understanding amongst youth from warring areas of the world. Visions has consulted with the White House, the U.S. Department of State, Seeds of Peace International, the Ministries of Education of Israel and the Arab world, and churches, synagogues, mosques, and house of worship throughout the world. Roya lives in Pennsylvania with her family, and she's extremely proud of her daughter, a Boren Scholarship winner and college junior, majoring in marine biology and Japanese studies. Roya's fun includes international and domestic travel, reading books and plays, theater, swimming, paddleboarding, and hiking. And of course, because she's been in some of my classes over the years, yeah. she uses mindfulness, meditation, and yoga to ground, focus, and prepare herself for her life and work. She recently assisted her 89-year-old mother in writing and publishing an autobiography, which focuses on a young woman and her immigration experience to the United States. Roya is also a theater artist and writes, directs, and acts in social justice theater. And Roya is available to counsel and coach around challenges and issues of living in a monolithic society and having a pluralistic, multicultural identity.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Welcome, Roya.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so excited. First of all, it's such an honor to have you here. We've known each other
yes.
for a long time now.
Yes, we have.
Mm-hmm. And I've had the privilege of spending a lot of time with you over the years. And what I love about our relationship, our friendship, is that I feel like as soon as I'm in your presence, I could really go deep.
Yes.
Yeah. We could just I've never had a conversation with you about, except just now we were talking about our hair. Yeah. Right. We usually we're getting into the meat of it, right down into the heart of, what's getting curious. So I just want to thank you for that, because I know that being in your presence today, I feel like that energy is just going to ripple out and our discussion today will feel so meaningful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talked last week preparing for this,
Mm-hmm.
I keep thinking about the words cross-cultural competency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such an emphasis in all of the work you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like you to just tell us what that means to you
Mm-hmm.
and why it is so important right now.
Thank you. Great. Excellent question. Jen, to me, cross-cultural competency is the ability to communicate clearly and authentically with someone of a different culture or faith tradition or lifestyle. And cross-cultural competency doesn't just appear. One of the things I work with when I work with young people, whether they're teens or college students, is we work in what I call conflict transformation. And we work in global leadership. So before, there's a catchphrase everybody likes to use, conflict resolution. There are multiple steps before conflict resolution. You have to be able to bring two different sets of ideas to the table. And there needs to be almost a training period or a learning or willingness to do cross-cultural competency, learn those skills. Then we can go to conflict transformation skills. How can we transform not just each other, but society? And then after that comes the idea of conflict resolution. Now, that being said, conflict resolution is actually quite an ideal. It really is. I think most of us are living in and I do believe most people would like, especially today, really want to learn. I've had very, very wonderful, as you say, deep philosophical, existential conversations with people who are, please, we want cross-cultural competency. We want to learn. We want to know what to say. We want to know what to do when we go to a ritual or a celebration of a different religion. So that's what it means to me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And thank you for that. It's why do you think right now is a unique time to be having this conversation?
Because we can no longer live, and we no longer live in a monolithic society. I think in different points of our history, there has always been the conflict between the cultures, and I'd like to identify something and define something first. I do not believe in the word race. I do not believe in the concept of race. It is an artificial construct that was created to make sure one set of people could dominate another set of people. So I will use the word culture, but and if I do use the word race, catch me. Definitely. So I think that this time, more than any time in history, people are realizing we are not a monolith. What does that mean? It means that you cannot identify people. You cannot say all policemen and women, all Black men and women, all Jewish men and women, all Caucasian men and women. You and I in this conversation, I know we're going to discuss the concept of white fragility. Well, that doesn't mean all whites, So I think that this time has been vitally important because it's combining mindfulness with social justice. We've all been stuck at home for the past 4 months. Those of us who have the privilege have been able to sit in contemplation and meditation, think about ourselves, think about what needs to be changed. And then the riots occurred and the conflict occurred. And now we have to go out and with our self-knowledge, with our work, inner work, we have to do our social justice work, our social justice action. So that's what's so unique about right now to me.
Yeah. We talked, you and I talked about this, and it felt like COVID, being in quarantine, we were quarantined here in the Northeast, we're in Northeast Pennsylvania. And really, we're still many of us are still very much social distancing,
Mm-hmm.
but we had a stay-at-home order here for 14 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was this time of deep, for some, not all,
Exactly. Not all. Mm-hmm.
not all. And I like the way I heard or read someone describe, we kept hearing, oh, we're all in the same boat. And somebody said, oh, no, 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 no.
Mm-mm.
We're in the same storm, right?
Yeah.
We're all in the same storm,
Yes.
but there's all different types of boats floating
Exactly.
through this stormy sea.
Exactly.
So, I experienced the privilege of having some time to just go into these deep contemplative, healing, kind of nurturing womb-like spaces.
Exactly.
And then, of course, as soon as, things started shifting, we started shifting out of these stay-at-home orders, the Black Lives Matter movement, the murder of George Floyd, the protests and riots and everything that's unfolded. It was almost like, shaking, wake up. It's time, right?
Yeah.
Wake up.
Yeah. Wake up.
up.
I'd like to take this a moment to thank the first responders all over the world, and to the people who had to keep going into work, with masks on, even though a lot of us did have the privilege of staying home. So I think it's important to thank them.
Yeah. Thank you for naming that. Thank you. And here we are again with, whether we want to call it the second wave or this extension of the first wave.
Yeah.
So they're very, very much still in the muck of COVID. We all are. How is, this is lifelong work for you.
Absolutely.
And so how have your experiences in this work, how are they informing this moment, how you're meeting this moment?
Okay. Well, if I think about, the trajectory of my career, starting in graduate school, I chose to major in social work. I was always fascinated and wanted to work in social work and social justice. And my university had two choices. You could go on what was called the clinical track if you saw yourself much more as an individual psychotherapist, somebody that would work with children, families, and individuals. And then they had a community track, which sparked my interest. We would go out into the immediate community. Also, my school was in downtown Baltimore, so there were no ivy-colored hills. We were right in the middle of Baltimore. And shout out to Baltimore, because I had a great time there. So I went on the community track, and I became more and more interested in our globe as a community. And I remember going to my advisor and saying, I would like to create my own focus or my own major in global social work. And he agreed. However, he said, you're going to have to find your own mentors and your own internship. And I did. I actually as a stroke of luck, my sister happened to sit next to the founder of Seeds of Peace at a dinner party in Washington, D.C. Seeds of Peace is an organization. It is about 30 years old at this point, approximately 30 years old at this point, that brings together youth from warring areas of the world to a 3-week camp experience in Maine. And when they are at that camp experience, when we're having the camp experience, the kids do conflict transformation work, and then they get to be good old campers with softball and, camp experiences, things like that. So that fascinated me. So I decided, I called and I arranged a research and internship with them. And I did a longitudinal research project. I was interviewing the kids to see, between day 1 and day 21, did it make a difference that they were exposed to kids of a different region and nature? And it did. It did. It absolutely did. And So Bobby Gottschalk, the other founder of Seeds of Peace, became my mentor. She is my friend and mentor to this day. And Seeds of Peace has expanded into not just a 3-week camp in Maine, but programs all over the world where Israelis, for example, go into schools with Palestinians from the West Bank, or Palestinians go into schools and speak with their Israeli friends. So that had a very, very strong influence on my career. Then I like to joke, I found myself in the middle of all the world trauma. I was living in Los Angeles in the early 90s and the Los Angeles riots, stemming from a gentleman named Rodney King being pulled out of his truck and beaten. And I was in the city at the time. I was out of my home, but I remember very vividly seeing the protesters, very angry protesters, and had absolute right to be, and seeing my city burn, and having to leave the actual city of Los Angeles where I lived at the time and go into the San Fernando Valley to stay safe. But I wanted
and this
to be
was
back.
and this was right after your graduate studies, correct, Roya?
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Right. So you were very young.
Yeah.
About 30 years ago.
Yep.
And this. So I want to pause there for a second, because
Sure.
I think. So we talked about this rage.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We talked about rage, and I'm curious about anger and rage, and how we can be with anger and rage in a meaningful way, and how can we relate the rage of this moment of the Black Lives Matter movement and historical moments in time in the Black community specifically.
Right. So I think that I'll just finish up and say I was in during the riots of 9/11 in LA, and then at 9/11 of 2001, I was right in Washington, DC. So experienced those as well. Yes, I think, ideally, we all grow up in a society that allows us to express our feelings, but we don't. I think the first thing we have to say about rage is that I don't believe that men in our society, any men in our society, are encouraged to express their feelings. So when you are suppressing rage, it comes out in different ways. It could come out sideways. It could come out in violence. It could come out in depression. So I think the first thing we have to do as our society is allow people that rage. The second thing about rage to me is don't pigeonhole people. Don't stereotype people. Unfortunately, there are stereotypes of certain kind of cultures. Oh, the angry this, the angry that. No, that's not fair. That's not fair. Some people have an absolute right to be angry. So I think that's something you need to keep as an open mind. And third, as you and I had the conversation, let's bring it to the table. Okay, let's figure out a way where we can sit at the table together and we can express our rage without attacking or hurting each other. It's okay to say, I'm angry. I'm enraged. Nothing has changed. What's changed? The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was marching, and we're back marching again. So they have, the people who are involved in the Black Lives Matter movement have an absolute right to the rage, to feel the rage, to express the rage, but to take the rage, to a point where it's either hurting them or hurting other people. And I'm talking all cultures. And when I say Black Lives Matter movement, talking all cultures, because I have seen all cultures at the demonstrations. So a way of expressing the rage. The third point is, I'm an artist. I have many friends who are artists. One of the best ways to channel rage is to create art. It's to create. I have seen some beautiful paintings of Breonna Taylor. I've seen some gorgeous, I've seen some plays being written. I'm hearing beautiful poetry being written. I have a friend who's just started creating poetry, and he sends them to me once a week. So I think that's a way of expressing rage. But
Right.
be very careful not to stereotype people.
Of course. Right.
Yeah.
So, because the rage is present, the rage is present, and it's present in many different ways, in many different forms, not just in the Black Lives Matter movement, certainly.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
In the women's movement, yeah.
Right, right. And the reason I think it's important to talk about it is that it is transformative. These feelings, they're transformative, and they could propel us forward in really, really dramatic ways. And as you just pointed out, just accessing creativity, innovation, purpose.
Yeah. Being allowed to say the words, looking across at someone, being allowed to say the words, I'm angry. I'm enraged. This should not be happening. It certainly propels my work. I'll tell you that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And for so many, those strong emotions, whether it's rage or fear or agitation, whatever's coming up, it gets really uncomfortable.
Here we go with the discomfort. Right. Exactly.
Right. Like even in this conversation right now, with all the preparation, I'm so worried that I'll say something the wrong way, or make a mistake in the way I'm asking a question, and it is an uncomfortable moment. And why do you think that that's important, and how do we work with it?
Okay. Well, I think, I go to my work as a psychotherapist when I think of those uncomfortable feelings. And time again, my clients will cry in session, and the first words out of their mouths are, I'm sorry. Why? I ask, why? Why are you sorry? For expressing authentic feelings. Why are you sorry? I'm afraid. I shouldn't be afraid. I'm angry. No, wait, no, that's okay. And, they'll giggle after something, So again, it goes back to our society encouraging us, and it starts with the families. Our families encouraging us that it is okay to express emotion, and it is okay to express strong emotion. Jen, I may be a scholar, but I am not an expert. And my discomfort sits with, I am not a spokesperson for any particular group. I'm a spokesperson for myself and my experiences and what I do. I do say the wrong things sometimes. And what I would offer to your listeners and to you would be, can we make an agreement that if we're disturbed by something each other says, or, like the example I brought up about race, or if somebody makes a mistake, that it's okay to acknowledge it and acknowledge that we're all of one race called the human race. We're all human, and we can work through it.
Right. That's very interesting. How does this particular, this topic in particular, this discomfort, how does it relate to that word that's, newer? Maybe it's been around for a long time, but this idea of white fragility and how it's come into the discussion, and how, white privilege and white fragility and this discomfort that's kind of clouding the opportunities to connect.
Well, first of all, for your listeners, the term white fragility was coined by a sociologist named Robin DiAngelo. She was actually writing an academic paper, and it's from 2011. So it's not that old of a term. Just for the fun of it, because I'm a nerd and a researcher, I decided to look up Oxford Dictionary, as in Oxford, England. I decided to look up their definition of white fragility, And then I went to the Urban Dictionary. And if I may, they're not that long. I'd like to read them to you. So
Okay.
here is from the definition from the Oxford Dictionary. White fragility is discomfort and defensiveness on the part of a white person when confronted by information about racial inequality and injustice. Okay, that's that one sentence. That's Oxford. Okay, get ready to listen. Here's the Urban Dictionary. Quote unquote, white people in North America live in a social environment that protects and insulates them from race-based stress. This insulated environment of racial protection builds white expectations for racial comfort, at the same time lowering their ability to tolerate racial stress, leading to what I refer to as white fragility. This is the Urban Dictionary. White fragility is a state in which even a minimum amount of racial stress becomes intolerable, triggering a range of defensive moves. These moves are and can be outward displays of anger, fear, guilt, argumentation, silence, and leaving the room. Urban Dictionary gave an example, a sentence example. I tried to explain to my friend Anne why Confederate statues are not a symbol of her state, but white fragility stopped her from understanding. Mm-hmm. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're seeing, where many of you I know, and a lot of us are on social media, and we're seeing and experiencing so much of that firsthand, especially on social media. It's so prevalent.
Yes.
What is your advice on, because I think also there's some reconciliation going on with most white people I know, me included.
Yes.
So just recognizing, doing the work to really see how privilege has created biases that I didn't even know that were there. And just kind of grappling with some of the really difficult emotions that have surfaced because of that, and the willingness to do the work, the willingness to do the work. And so many people are willing to do that work, and then many people are not.
No.
And so what do you think cultivates the willingness? Like, where does the willingness come from? And is that something that can be extended out?
Yeah. I'm really glad you asked that question, because, you and I were talking about ecosystems, and like you, I'm a very holistic thinker. And, as I was educated, and as I believe, a child or a young person in this society is influenced by three major areas of their life: their family, their schooling or education, and their community. So if we want to continue being uncomfortable, but being willing to have that conversation, let's start in those three places. Let's start having the discussion of, different cultures, the idea that race is an artificial construct, different countries around the world, different languages, different faith traditions. Let's do that at home. I have a book I recommend that I bought when my daughter was little, called 40 Ways to Raise a Non-Racist Child. And I'll send that to you in the links of some of the resources. But there are definitely ways to raise children in which they're open-minded. Now let's go to school. Let's talk about the work of Jane Elliott. Who's Jane Elliott? Jane Elliott was a third grade teacher in Iowa. She's now world famous. Why? Jane Elliott did the infamous blue eye, brown eye experience. She took a class of mostly Caucasian kids, a third grade class in Iowa, And she decided to divide them up into those who had blue eyes and those who had brown eyes, those who wore glasses and those who didn't wear glasses. And what she did was, she's told one group that they would have much more privilege over the other and control over the other. And the amount of, if you want to talk about rage, the amount of rage, animosity, hurt, conflict that came out of those third graders, she was giving them the example. And by the end, I sometimes watch her old films. By the end, the kids were able to articulate to Jane Elliott, no, we don't treat people like that. It's not okay to treat people like that, different people like that. So there's school. Now community. You know, we are an isolated culture. There is a strength in many other cultures around the world where family, extended family, and friends stick together. So at any given moment, a child is surrounded by aunties, uncles, cousins, even people who care for them that aren't blood relatives. They're still called aunties and uncles and cousins, you know? In the community, what are we doing to connect our children and our young people with civic organizations, with, you know, with your place of worship, and is your place of worship doing social justice work? So home, school, community, those three, it needs to be addressed. Also in home, and I credit you for this, Jennifer, for helping me think about this. In the home, using meditation and mindfulness. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Oh,
I appreciate that.
Yes.
And so what do we do with everybody else?
Yeah.
Right? So what if you were raised in a home, I was, where there was racism
Mm-hmm.
in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And, and luckily I somehow came out of that experience open and curious and and wanting to connect.
Yeah.
And so was able to kind of deconstruct those really unhealthy ideas and energies and patterns. But what if you don't have that? What if it's not, we see so many people, and we see adults, and we're at this crucial point, I believe, in history, where we have an opportunity to transform and to kind of change this trajectory that we're on of polarization. And so how bringing in, your experiences with all of the projects that you've been involved in with your work, how do we reach out a hand to those that, maybe that these skills can be trained up, these qualities of being can be trained up. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first I'll share my thoughts, and then I'll tell you about my childhood, which was highly unusual, but very important, and why I do the work I do. I'm going to now appeal to the educators in the audience and all over, and I'm going to appeal to the community leaders in the audience. I'm going to appeal to the clergy. Please encourage cultural and faith-based dialogue. Please teach Black history, teach Native American history, teach different histories in your classroom. I did not have that. I did not get that. I got it from home, but as I said, I was in a very unusual situation. So if we're looking at the triangle of home, school, community, if a child is home and they're being raised in a racist home, please create opportunities for them to open their minds and to be open to different cultures by the community, by the faith, the faith tradition, by the civic organizations. Also, let's you and I be very frank, Jennifer. Where are young people going these days to get their information? And she's allowed to. My 20-year-old laughs at me when, I'm not up on the latest social media. I will admit, everybody, I just found out about TikTok. I didn't know about it. Somebody just told me about it. But, I would encourage, now I'm going to go to the entertainers and the people who are making films and music videos. I implore you, encourage this dialogue, okay? Tell us about your people. Tell us your story, okay? There need to be many, many more films directed by women in Hollywood, many, many more films produced by women, and music videos and, TikTok videos. And, we're in this incredible age of YouTube and TikTok. We are filming and we are creating our own lives on social media. Use that, young people. Use that to whoever's on there. Use it to create dialogue, to open up, to have questions. That would be my answer. So homeschool, community, and social media. Very quickly, and my father did this. When my father was alive and working in our community, he would go out to different schools and speak. But I have a dad born in Alexandria, Egypt, near the Jewish quarter of Egypt, came here at the age of 25, educated himself at Columbia University, got his PhD, and then came to Wilkes University and taught in the education department, but taught comparative education. His students were fascinated, just fascinated. He would talk about education in different parts of the world. My mom's grandfather was one of the first practitioners of the Baha'i faith. I send you information on the Baha'i faith. Late 1800s, in the country of Iran, sometimes called Persia, a gentleman named the Baha'u'llah began to form his own religion. He didn't like the predominant religion of the day, which happened to be Islam. And so he created his own faith tradition. He created writings, and my grandfather would travel with him around the world. And my grandfather was a translator. He could speak 7 languages. My great-grandfather. So in my home growing up, we hear stories of our family. My father and mother welcomed people from all over the world, of all different faith traditions, into our home. And we were raised traveling the world, and we experienced direct racism. We definitely experienced. I was called the N-word on the playground. The Ku Klux Klan called our home and threatened my father and our family. So I know both sides, actually. But I know what works with young people. So,
Thank you. So how, I want to pause here on this idea of stories and storytelling and truth telling. And, we talked about Brené Brown and some of her work, and how these stories, which are often linked intimately with trauma, linked intimately with ancestral trauma, linked intimately with history that has not been, that has been hidden, as especially in the United States. Why is storytelling so critical in healing?
Yeah. Wow, so many answers. Let me start with a microcosm. There is a psychologist named Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and he is one of the leading researchers and writers in the country on trauma. And what he says about trauma is that the problem is that when we try to recall the traumatic experience, it only comes in flashes and bits and pieces. And here's a key point. When we're stuck in trauma, we cannot change the construct of our reality. There is part of us that is always reacting from trauma. What do we know about trauma? How do people react? How do people react with PTSD? Angry outbursts, depression, anxiety. So the key to why is storytelling, why is all art important in treating trauma? Because, and there are wonderful organizations that do this as well, because when I sit across from you and I'm sharing a story and you're connecting with me, not necessarily that we came from the same family or that we're of the same culture or even from the same country, but we're sharing the human experience. We're sharing connection. Guess what gets to the part of the brain where trauma is stuck? Storytelling, art, because it creates that connection, that warmth, that connection. I'd like to encourage your viewers to go to an organization called Narrative 4. This actually brings school children together all over the world, and they tell each other stories. We've done some very, very good work at Wyoming Seminary with Narrative 4 as well. Kids for Peace uses the link. Seeds of Peace uses it. There's a lot of that. So it's the connection.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Human connection.
It's the human connection. And, you know, all the studies that people have done on aging and why are there parts of the world where people live to be 100 and 103? Did they stop smoking? Were they drinking? Was it diet? Was it anything? It was the fact that they had community and connection, that they had a purpose. So yeah.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. You've expressed so much gratitude. You shared a little bit about your family, your parents specifically, their work that has been very influential on you as a practitioner. What else can you tell me about how they informed the work that you do today? And what has been the strongest, outside of them, who else has been a hero to you in cultivating this mission?
Well, I would highlight the dinner table conversations in my house growing up, and I hope my sister is listening. I know my mom will listen to the recording, and I'll send it to my brother too. The dinner table conversations in my house growing up were about politics, cultures, history, kind of like the deep conversations you and I have, you know?
Yep.
So we were literally encouraged to discuss these issues, encouraged to discuss the feelings we had around these issues. I believe that, the formative experiences in childhood, we're talking ages birth through 5 or birth through 7. Between the ages of birth through 7, I traveled the world and I heard multiple languages and I met multiple people. Do I remember everything in all of them? No. Do I think they had a great influence on me? Absolutely. Absolutely. And the final piece about my family was my favorite toy growing up was a globe. I used to sit and spin the globe when I was a kid. And, I will say it, I will label myself a nerd. I don't care. I did, it wasn't a doll. It wasn't Barbies, it wasn't, although I had those. I did have those. And that's another discussion on feminism. But it was a globe. It was actually a globe, and I would sit and I would be fat and I would Dad, Mom, tell us about this place. Tell us about that place. So that really informed me. I'm going to refer to my list because when you sent me the question about who my mentors or heroes are, sociologist Margaret Mead, always a big fan. My daughter is also a fan, and we do some reading together. Elie Wiesel, Viktor Frankl for their persistence. A writer, Naguib Mahfouz of Egypt. An Iranian writer named Azar Nafisi. She did Reading Lolita in Tehran. Toni Morrison. I actually saw her speak in LA when I was much younger. Psychologist Erik Erikson. And social activist Brian Stevenson, whose book Just Mercy And there's also a movie, I believe, about him as well, has come to the forefront. So
Yeah.
there are so many more, so many more. So many.
Yeah, so many people doing such incredible work right now.
Yeah.
You know, and so many voices like coming to the table and stories being told. And for that, you know, I know we both feel incredible gratitude.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah.
And so we have a question coming in because I wanted to,
Please.
and for the audience, as you have questions, please feel free to chat the questions in, and I will go ahead and read the questions off to Roya.
Sure.
So this question specifically is from Dr. Christine Keisinger, and she said, I'm very interested in the term conflict transformation. Can you tell us more about what this means and why it precedes resolution? Also, can you talk about the role that creativity plays in meeting conflict? It seems to me that when we pair the words creative and conflict, something becomes more possible.
Okay. Excellent question. Hello, Christine. Let me talk a little bit about conflict transformation and then creativity. Why do we have to engage in transformation before there's resolution? Because, you know, let me use an analogy here. I think before any argument or any disagreement is resolved and both people walk away with a sense of peace, more peace. Okay, there's no 100% perfection. Both people walk away with a sense of more peace. Then they can come together and they can do the conflict resolution work. And think of conflict resolution as writing a resolution, almost like writing the Constitution, writing a new law, you know, creating a new organization. That comes as the last step. The transformation has to happen first, and the inner transformation and outer transformation have to happen first. Then once that's set, then we write a resolution together. I think she had a very good question about conflict and creativity. What is it about creativity that allows us? When we are in conflict and when we are in rage, in anger, in fear, we are at and I'm pointing to the stem of my brain, we are accessing the evolutionary part of our brain, evolutionary part of our brain. We are accessing the fight or flight or flee from another culture. They're different. I've either got to fight them or I've got to run away. Okay. Freeze. I'm just going to freeze and I'm not going to do anything because I'm too scared to do anything. And author and mindfulness coach Tara Brach says we can stay in those two things. Okay, those three, fight, flight, or freeze. Or we can go to something called tend and befriend. These are her words. This is Dr. Tara Brach, psychologist and mindfulness expert. She said we can tend and befriend if we are in conflict and in fear or anger. And tending and befriend means we nurture ourselves and we nurture others. And Christine, to me, creativity is not only nurturing ourselves, but nurturing others. Let's do an artistic project with each other. Let's create play with each other. Let's, paint something together. Let's go out and I have many, many wonderful friends who are community activists. Let's go out and paint a mural together. What does the tend and befriend do? It brings us back to the calmer spaces of our brain. I think I would have liked to have been a neurologist if I didn't go into the field I went into. I'm so fascinated by the brain. But creativity brings us out of the evolutionary fight, flight, or freeze and brings us into let's tend and let's befriend. Christine, I would recommend the work any of the drama therapists. If you're not familiar with the modality or any of the authors, I would recommend looking at drama therapy in change management and conflict transformation. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
We had another question come in from Paula. This one is from Paula. And she says, I would like to hear about how one can improve cultural competence. Books, movies, podcasts that you might recommend.
Well, the book, although Paula's kids are older, hi Paula, thank you for asking a question. The book I recommend for younger kids is called 40 Ways to Raise a Non-Racist Child. You know, take your kids to movies produced by different cultural groups or different faith groups. For you. Okay, I saw Paula's chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, for yourself. I was thinking for her kids.
For her.
Terrific kids and a husband, by the way. She does.
She does.
For her, yes. Paula, you already do all that. I would encourage her to look at the beginning of the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad's work. I think we should look and read more about the, I don't want to use the word Native American because I'm hearing it's not PC anymore. I want to use the word the indigenous people of the Americas. Podcasts, Brene Brown. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown because she has what I call beginner's mind. She's always willing to learn, always willing to listen, always taking notes from her guests. And Paula, I will look on my book. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, and I'm going to send you some more ideas for books. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula.
And Roya, what I'm really curious about right now is what in this moment in time with COVID and the protests and this opportunity and of course, you know, the politics going on today that are so polarizing for us, what is giving you hope and making you feel really curious?
Honestly, what's giving me hope is the mindfulness and meditation work, the self-care, the nurturing piece I was talking about a few minutes ago. When I take time to nurture myself, whether it's meditation, mindfulness, paddleboarding, swimming at the ocean, swimming. I took a beautiful bike ride through the woods this morning, and I just listened for, you know, rocks, and I looked at beautiful birch trees, and just nature is very healing. So when I take time to nurture myself, I can go and I can nurture others. So that's what really feeds me. My family, absolutely. I have family all over the world, and I have family of the that participate in the 3 major Abrahamic religions, as well as the Baha'i faith, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. My family is great. We have lots of overseas Zoom calls and conferences. And my daughter was adopted from Andhra Pradesh in India as an infant. And through her, I have learned a lot about the culture of India and wanting to be a role model for my daughter. That's what gives me hope and keeps me going on this journey. And, you know, the feedback of people like you, students, clients, that yes, people do want to know. People are ready to change. There are people that are willing to sit with the discomfort. Yes, for them. For them. And I'm not planning on stopping. I'm not planning on retiring and ever sitting home. There's too much to do. I don't think you are either.
No, I'm not either. No way.
Yeah.
This is too much fun, right? And I know that you are writing a play, or you wrote a play, and you're acting in it as well.
Actually, this one I'm not going to. I have to thank my dear friend Connor O'Brien. an actor in New York and here in Scranton, and one of the founders of the Scranton Fringe Festival. Connor and I had a glass of wine about 9 months ago, and he said, do you ever think of writing a play about revolutionary Iran, about the late 1970s in Iran when the Shah was overthrown and what families went through, and there were a lot of protesting and a lot of riots. So I am working on that play right now. I am writing that play. The main characters are three sisters in their teens and early 20s, and their mother and their father. And the way I'm writing it is, and going back to this tend and befriend and nurture, every Monday night, a friend of mine who's a drama therapist and playwright, we get on the phone and we write and we critique each other's work. So I'm not doing it alone. I'm not doing it alone. It comes in community. So yes.
Yeah,
yes.
It comes in community.
It comes in community. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that. I mean, maybe all things come in community and connection.
Yeah. Social change doesn't happen when the top 1% of the country or the world change. Social change happens, and this will always stick with me, if we work with every strata of society, every socioeconomic group, every age group, every faith tradition, every culture. That's when social change happens. And bringing equality to every strata of society.
To the table, right?
Coming to the table.
Coming to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we could end on that note.
Yes.
It's a beautiful, beautiful note to end on, because I know that you've attended our Riverfront Yoga Project classes so many times, and
yes.
And that's starting next Saturday.
Thank you.
July 4th. So I hope to see you there.
You will
and
see me there.
Is there any other projects or anything else you would like to promote? How does our community find you? Where do they connect?
Yes. Okay. Well, I hope Paula is still listening, because Paula, I found 2 books for you. The name of the author is Patricia Roman McGraw. I'll send this to you. And there's a book on ancestral trauma and change called It's Not Your Fault. And she wrote another book called Wisdom of the Heart. So Paul, I think those will really resonate with you. Yes, what is happening? Exciting. You are welcome. Exciting happenings. In 2002, when I founded my organization after 9/11, I called it Visions of Tolerance. My name in Arabic, Farsi, and Turkish means a good vision for the world, a good dream for the world. So I was pulling from, my experience. A young Muslim man came up to me at a workshop and he said, Miss Roya, I would like to tell you something. I don't think you should use the word tolerance. I think we don't just tolerate each other. We have to really try to connect with each other. So I am building a new website. I got a new logo, and the new organization is called Cultural Change Consultants. Look for the new website. In the meantime, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Roya Fahmy. I love to dialogue, have discussions, and I welcome those of you who have very different views than mine. I welcome you to do civil discourse.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Yeah.
What a joy this was. Thank you. We're getting so many messages of gratitude. Everyone is very pleased with our talk today. And I just want to thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
And more importantly, your commitment to this good work.
You're most welcome. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. Okay.
Yes. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank all of you for attending from all around the country and the world. We will be posting this recording of the interview with Roya on our blog. It will also be available on the Studio B platform. And we will be posting all of the resources that Roya brought in today to our talk, and all of the links that she also provided. So thank you again for that, Roya.
Absolutely.
And I will look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much. All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.